Can I have a pixie voice? Are we better? Okay, that was exciting. Thank you so much to the Celtic Quintet. We gave them a name. Claude, Savi, Paul, Jim, and Allison, who are going to play with us all service. Thank you so much. Woo, woo, woo. I see no one else was brave to sit up there with them, but that's okay. You better behave or I'll make you go up there. No, I'm just kidding. So excited that we're all here this morning. I'm sure some of you were awake earlier this morning when it was pouring rain, and it just over the last few hours just transformed into a beautiful, magical Sunday morning, and we're delighted to see all these wonderful faces here. Now, I'm glad to see people wearing green in honor of St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, tomorrow. And something happened. I think that there were leprechauns in our sanctuary or something, because there's green and white everywhere. We're going to have a kind of festive Celtic service today and share a little bit about community. That's the plan for this morning. So we hope you all feel very engaged. For those of you who might lose your attention, I'm going to offer that there are 8 little butterflies, green butterflies, somewhere in the sanctuary. So if at some point your attention needs to drift, you can play Where's Waldo and try and find all 8. There you go. We are so excited to be here. We gather every Sunday morning in this beautiful building, in the beautiful woods of the North Shore, on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. We recognize that historically we've not had a healthy relationship with all of our First Nations cousins and friends, and we're working to make that better in the world. We gather here together to make community. We gather to feel better about ourselves, to remind ourselves about what's important in the world. That's not an easy thing to do these days, is it? We have a complex history, we have a complex current reality, and so coming here gives us a sense of who we are. Here you are seen, here you are known, and if you're new, you'll become known, but you'll just know that you are welcome, even if you're new. And if you're joining us online, we're so glad you're here. It takes all kinds of layers and ways to make community, so we're really grateful that folks have decided to watch the service afterwards. No matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter what you do for a job or did for a job, no matter what you experienced in life before you walked through the doors, maybe for the first time or maybe just this morning, you are welcome here. Here we gather to hold each other in love and empathy and compassion, and we do that through meaningful connection. We empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. And we do that through the service of life and the service of community. So welcome. Let's all stand together. Our gathering song this morning is Come, Come, Whoever You Are. We'll sing it once as a group together, and then we'll divide into 2. Now, how should we do that? Maybe you brave souls at the back will carry the first, and everyone else will do the second half. How's that? All right, here we go. Well done. That was a little bit creative, now wasn't it? So beautiful to sing the world better. That's how it feels sometimes, doesn't it? Well, as mentioned this morning, we're going to do everything a little bit differently, including the order of service. So if those of you are kind of tied to the way we normally do it, I'll just apologize in advance. We're going to start with some announcements. Just get those out of the way. There's a lot of them this morning. We're very excited to invite everyone to join here in the sanctuary for coffee and tea and treats after the service. You've had some already. And if you're a newbie, that feels a little bit intimidating, but we just really welcome you to come and join. It's a great way. This whole service is about community, and just being curious and introducing yourself and connecting is just a great way to kind of wiggle your way into the sense of community. Today we're going to have not just coffee and tea, we're actually going to have cake, because we are celebrating the 58th anniversary of North Shore Unitarians. Woo! Founded 58 years ago on March 19th, 1967. It's amazing that this community continues to be the vibrant space that it is. And I just want to hold with reverence. We have very few of those original founders still with us, and some have passed very recently. And I just want to hold those folks in vivid memory, in honor of all they did to contribute and build this place into the vibrant community that it is. So thank you to those folks. Further on our green theme, a reminder about our Resiliency Garden fundraiser that's going on. And this project includes the soil, which you could see was delivered. It's under the most magnificent blue tarp on the front lawn. You may have seen it on your way in. Also part of this project is plumbing for a permanent watering system for the front garden, and then some plants. So if you haven't contributed and you're interested, please see Marcia and Jean, who were going to be downstairs, but will probably be in the sanctuary, I'm guessing, after the service. And I will see you there, Marcia and Jean, because I have not contributed yet. I don't have a nice sticker on my name tag. It's like a very obvious way to know. What else? We have a garden party, a garden work party happening this Saturday. So if you feel like you want to dig or rake or pick up fallen branches, we'd love to have you here. Come anytime during that 9:30 to 2:30 time slot. You don't have to stay the whole time. Bring some shovels and rakes and wear appropriate clothing. If you're not a gardener and this is not appealing to you, we have another way you can contribute. You can show up sometime on Saturday morning with some treats to nourish the garden work party folks. We'd really appreciate those contributions also. Brian is the one organizing it. Brian, who's also doubling as our sound guy this morning. So please let Brian know if you're able to either come or to contribute to goodies. The next announcement, it's about this, I forgot to say one thing. Yes, if it's postponed, it'll be the following Saturday. So it'll go from March 22nd to the 29th, if it's just raining too heavily for us to garden. So this next announcement, I know it's been mentioned a couple times. I want to add a little personal note, and I'm doing this because I actually had a conversation with someone yesterday, and it said to me, maybe people don't really know what this production's about. So, and I think even the title is not super engaging, maybe particularly in a UU space. Anyway, so this production is done by the Culture. It's happened a couple times in Vancouver. We saw it in 2019 with Barry and Sue. Jell and I did, and we were incredibly moved. Jell and I lived and worked in Pemberton for 15 years, and we worked very closely with Indigenous communities there, the Lil'wat Nation and the Lower St'át'imc Nations. And I think we knew a little bit about the realities of residential schools before we lived and worked there, but we learned a whole lot more. And our difficulty, even to this day, in talking about reconciliation or about addressing systemic barriers to equity in the world is that so much of those conversations start from a place of guilt, like implied guilt or assumed guilt or imposed guilt. And my gosh, guilt is just not a healthy way to incite change in the world. It's not an inviting or engaging emotion. And what I'll offer you is this is a musical that does this completely differently. There's no shame in this production. This starts with recognizing the shared humanity with children, with parents, and with what it must have been like for those communities, without shame. It's beautiful. The music in it is phenomenal. It's as good as any musical production you'll see anywhere. The poignant moments are just heartfelt, and you will walk away with a deeper understanding of what it's been like for our Indigenous neighbors and friends, again, with no shame, but actually with inspiration for their resilience. So I just offer that to you if you're at all interested. It's playing for a week. There are still tickets. The Tuesday night tickets are $29. My gosh, it's like the price of a movie ticket these days. And I know there's a group going on Tuesday and there's a group going on Saturday. So if you're at all interested, speak to Barry or I, and we're happy to kind of connect you there. There's my personal addition to that thought. There's a ton of other announcements, lots going on. I should say, the point about that service or that production is we're going to have a talk-back session on the Sunday after the week. So if you see it, then you can actually join on the Sunday afternoon and chat about it, what your experience or your thoughts are. Sorry, important addition. Lots of other announcements. The Guitar Interest Group is meeting again every second Tuesday, this time focusing on Canadian tunes, which is awesome. There's a movie night happening on Friday, March 28th. There's a mythology workshop being offered by Marga once a month on Saturdays, and the Harmony Mountain Singers are doing an amazing choir performance on April 26th here called Sundays on Saturdays. So smart. Sundays meaning ice cream Sundays. So come enjoy an ice cream sundae after an amazing choir concert. This place is hopping with activities. Check your e-bulletin, check the website, and the stairwell going downstairs to the bathrooms has posters. Jenny does an amazing job creating sign-up sheets and posters for all these activities. One last announcement, Bruce's service next week is all about coffee. It's, I think, what fuels us as you use. And it's based on the story of Phil, your nephew, who started a coffee company. And we'll actually have some of Phil's company's coffee here to enjoy during the service next week. So consider joining. Are there any other announcements this morning? All right, then. Well, then let's light our chalice together. Can I ask you, Allison, would you mind lighting it? Thank you. We do this every week as a ritual to get us into the depth of community and our service. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering. May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace. Then we light a second candle for joys and sorrows. Do we have any joys and sorrows to be shared from the community today? Woohoo! Happy 19th to your friend. That's awesome. Thank you, Lila. I'll throw in a joy. It's related to birthdays. My dad is a St. Paddy's Day birthday boy, and so he watches us every week from Southern Ontario. So, Dad, tomorrow when you see the service, happy birthday from the North Shore Unitarians. Yeah. And I'll just say my dad is a role model of resilience. He's faced some incredibly difficult years, and he always finds a way to find joy, and then actually to find a way to share joy. So thanks, Dad, for doing that. Any other joys or concerns? Yeah, please share.
I have a son who lives in Switzerland, and he had a birthday 3 days ago, and I just want to bring that up because it would be nice if he lived here, but I enjoy bringing it out to the congregation that he would like to know his name is part of this community.
Thank you. Yes, we will hold that in our hearts. Thank you. And one more, yes.
My granddaughter Percival granddaughter got married on Friday.
Oh, a wedding. How lovely to celebrate a wedding. Wonderful. Any others to hold up? Well, for all those that have been mentioned, weddings and birthdays, and for everything that sits in the silent sanctuaries of our heart, we've lit this candle of joys and concerns. And the last candle we light every week is the candle of global concerns. Where does one start? Well, here's what I'll offer. These are hard days for our community, our country, and our world. And it sure seems like we're not seeing leaders that are role modeling civility or kindness, are we? The RCMP is actually doing an investigation right now of these stickers. They're white stickers being put on poles and fences. And with the QR code and what's written, it links to incredible words of hatred, of racial discrimination. And do you know where it's happening? In Lonsdale, like right on our beloved North Shore. So this idea of global concerns, I think we just have to remind ourselves that it starts right here, right? Our actions, our attitudes, our words matter. And communities like ours, we need to be beacons of light that hold up the power of love, the radical power of love, to hold in our hearts and in our actions and our words, like the shared humanity, right, that we all hold. And we need to hold that alive in our hearts, our minds, our words, and our actions. We are the keepers of that flame with other groups out there, and we need to be strong in our outward action about it. Martin Luther King, one of the quotes that he said is, "Only when it's dark enough can you see the stars." I find that a little bit inspiring in days like this. So I'll ask us just to hold in our hearts for a moment. Just think about how you can focus on the power of love against the evil forces of hatred and fear. And how can we be or support those who are being the beacons of light and the flames of hope and the stars in these dark times we're living in? Let's just hold that for a moment. Thank you. It's wild, the world we're living in. So, still shaking things up in the order of service, we're going to do our offertory. Our outreach recipient for the month of March is Hollyburn Community Services Society and their program specifically towards youth that are 13 to 18. As the parent of 2 children who've just come through that stage, I'm so grateful there's organizations like us out there. They operate the North Shore Youth Safe House. It's a 2-story building. On the top floor is 4 spaces, 4 beds, supported 24 hours with the goal of returning youth back to their stabilized family or onto independent living. And on the bottom floor is 2 beds of young people trying to transition towards independent living. They also do a ton of stuff around workplace experience and social supports. So they're a very worthy organization. Please consider donating. A little push about how you can donate. In the backs of our chairs, if you're new, there are these great envelopes. You can put cash in an envelope. You can put your name on it. You'll get a tax receipt. You can also donate by credit card with a QR code, by text with a number. However you donate, you can indicate whether you want all the money to go to the outreach recipient or whether you want to actually contribute it towards the operating costs of this beloved community. So please give as generously as you're able. And as we do that, we're going to stand and sing number 131, Love Will Guide Us. A little bit of improvisation. Apparently it's hard to donate into the basket while you sing, so I'm going to ask the Celtic Quintet to just noodle once again that while we pass the offering baskets as you sit down. There we go. I knew it. I'll collect those. Thank you so much. Thanks for all you do to share community and share our wealth in all senses with community. Thank you. So the service today is about community, and at first glance it might seem like it's a redundant topic. I mean, you're all here. But I think you're here because you believe in the power of community. And I actually have an ask that Jim would like to share something, probably related to that topic, so I'll bring the mic to you, Jim. Can we just test that the mic is on? Say something there, Jim, for us.
Thank you. The church meant so much to my wife, Marie, and she got a wonderful send-off here. And on the day of, I was too devastated to get up and give thanks, but I want to give my heartfelt thanks to the send-off that you gave to my wife, Marie.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Jim, I couldn't have asked for a better introduction to the topic of community, so thank you. Jill and I do some work that takes us away from this community, and our work is education, but it's all about community building. So the topic of communities and how we build communities and the power of it is very dear to our hearts. I'm actually not going to share very much about that today from our work, but maybe another time. But we spend a lot of time thinking about community and how you build community. So I hope to share a few of those thoughts with us today. The first is a book that I read recently. It's called Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. It's written by Vivek Murthy, and he's a physician. He's the former U.S. Surgeon General. It's a wonderful book. It's full of stories and poignant explanations about things that probably seem just straightforward, intuitive. He reminds us that as humans, we are social creatures. It's a simple and obvious fact, but therein lies both the problem and the solution to the current crisis of loneliness. He calls it a public health crisis, loneliness. It's the root cause and contributor to so many of the world's ills, shall we say, violence, anxiety, depression, and addiction. It's loneliness, he says, that's affecting our health, that is changing how children experience schools, that is affecting how people perform in the workplace. It's affecting our enjoyment of life, whether it's on vacation, it's on weekends, or just even in retirement, and it's a root cause of the sense of division and polarization that we all see in our society. And of course, this connects to all of Brené Brown's work, right? Brené, who's so often quoted saying, we are psychologically, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually hardwired for connection, for love and belonging. These are irreducible needs of all people. I love that, irreducible needs of all people. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. And the absence of love, belonging, and connection always leads to suffering. The evidence is irrefutable. Okay, so social connection is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Relationships are core to our being. But not all of us need connection in the same way, right? Some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts. At different phases of our life, we need it more or less. Adults need it in a different way than children do. There are just different ways of doing connection. We do all need some form of connection. And Sue walked us through so eloquently last week about how we can form deeper relationships in the world. We really need to see each other. Superficial relationships are the junk food of human connectivity. Cheap, instantly gratifying, but generally unhealthy and ultimately not sustainable. To truly flourish, our hearts need and yearn for deep, meaningful connection. We need people who will hold our hearts with care, who will forgive us when we make mistakes, and we intentionally do the same for them. We are deliberately accountable to one another. That all seems rather obvious to say. And one might ask, in this modern world of globalization, of digital connection, where we can move and shift and exchange cultures, both literally, like physically, in different spaces, and online, Life is now such a diverse, eclectic set of experiences, more than ever before. Is it still true today that we need to be rooted somewhere? You can guess the answer to that, but I'll share some wiser people than me whose quotes explain it a bit better. The first is Martin Shaw. He's a storyteller, a performer. He says, there's a wave in current culture. He says we're addicted to severance, to disconnection. We flit about so easily, traveling the world, being voyeurs to other people's lives. We've become habituated to just walking away from situations, from relationships, from people, from ideas, from cultures. We don't see them through anymore. And Bell Hooks, I'll know American author Bell Hooks, I just love this quote from her. She says, "Much as I enjoy the current commentary on love, I'm often struck by the dangerous narcissism fostered by spiritual rhetoric that pays so much attention to individual self-improvement and so little to the practice of love within the context of community." Interesting. She says, packaged as a commodity, individual spirituality becomes really no different than any other consumer item or activity, like a good exercise program. And while it may lead a person to feel better about themselves, it completely inhibits our power to enhance our collective communion with ourselves and others. And of course, that brings us to the question of whether there really are separate selves. Albert Einstein called the idea of separate selves an optical delusion of consciousness. I love that. An optical delusion of consciousness. James Baldwin said, "The longer I live, the more deeply I learn that love, all love, friendship, romance, family, it's the work of mirroring and magnifying each other's light. It's gentle work. And is in those moments when life and shame and sorrow occlude our own light from view, if there's still a clear-eyed, loving person around that can beam our light back at us, then it's life-saving work. In our best moments, we are those people for each other." Mother Teresa was known to say that the problem with the world is that we draw the circle of family too small. If we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. And Douglas Steer, he's a Quaker teacher. He talks about the age-old question, who am I? And he says it's a good question to ask. But on your good days, it leads you to a deeper question, which is, whose am I? Because the truth is, there's no identity outside of a relationship. You can't be a person all by yourself. To ask, whose am I, really extends the question far beyond our own self-absorbed self, and to wonder, who needs me? Who loves me? To whom am I accountable? To whom do I answer? Whose life is altered by my choices? With whose life or lives is my own all bound up inextricably in both the obvious and invisible ways? This is all about symbiosis, right? That bit of science that we've been learning about in the last couple decades, how the algae and the fungi work together to produce lichen. It's really an amazing thing. Scientists have worked together to figure out the factors that make that happen. When researchers first started this, they put the two together in the lab, the algae and the fungi, and they provided them with ideal conditions. And you know what they produced? Nothing. Nada. They gave each other the cold shoulder. They just proceeded to live separate but parallel lives. Someone said, sort of like platonic college roommates. I thought that was funny. That's living, actually, that's probably not the best analogy. Anyway. I just realized that in the moment. That's about living in proximity, not living in community. So, of course, the scientists were puzzled, and they started tinkering with the habitat and with the factors. And then when they realized, when they created, much harsher conditions, then the two would turn to each other and start to cooperate. So only with significant need did the hyphae of the fungus curl around the algae, and only when the algae was stressed would it welcome those advances. It's fascinating. When times are easy and there's plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. But when life is tenuous and conditions feel harsh, which it seems to all the time, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life going forward. Interconnection and mutual aid seem critical for survival, or at least so tell us the lichens. So psychotherapist Miriam Greenspan, she calls that intervulnerability. What a great term, intervulnerability. Awareness of the mutuality of suffering impels us to search for ways to heal the whole, rather than encase ourselves in our own bubble of denial and impossible individualism. Wow, that's powerful. That's why we share joys and sorrows, blessings and burdens, laments and laughter. It's the substrate on which community grows. It's all part of the magic and the mystery of connection. And there is good data that says people who participate regularly in faith communities are likely to live years longer than those who do not. Because people connected to communities of shared purpose are less lonely, more motivated, more hopeful, and more fulfilled. And I would say more beautiful. So let's pause there. Let's just contemplate this idea of community as we walk the labyrinth for the first time. Now, a few instructions. This group here, you on this side, will start first. Then those at the back, and then finally on this side. Our wonderful Celtic quintet is going to play music as we walk. So this group that starts, you'll exit out the side exit, go through the lobby, and you're going to start right over by where that wheelchair is. We'll move that. You're going to start by walking in front of where Barry and Sue are. That's the first part of the labyrinth. Let's just walk it quietly. Thank you, Barry. Let's walk wordlessly. Just hang on there for a sec. We're going to walk wordlessly. We're going to keep our heads down, look at our feet, not trip over one another, and just give some thought on what's going on in our brains and in our hearts, and all these ideas of shared reciprocity or intervulnerability. All right? It won't be long. It's a short labyrinth. Do you want to lead us off? Thank you. How did that feel? A little clunky at the start. We got it going. So I want to share a few other thoughts about community. Sharon Brous, she's an American rabbi who founded a Jewish community in Los Angeles in 2004 called Ikar. We've quoted here previously. She wrote a book called The Amen Effect, or The Amen Effect, Ancient Wisdom to Mend Our Broken Hearts and World. And this book, it expresses the meaning of sacred companionship. Sacred companionship. It's deeply rooted in her experience growing this faith organization and in the larger wisdom of Jewish tradition, although she's explicit that her perspective is a sacred call to both the faithful, the believers, and the cynics, or the non-believers. Like others on the topic, she describes how we human beings are fundamentally deeply relational humans, of course. We have a yearning to be known and to be seen, and we're imperfect in our striving to find our way through the forest together. But her book is intended as both a philosophy and a practical tool for social transformation. It's a response to the current waves of marginalization, of dehumanization, the mainstreaming of illiberal ideologies, and the growing threat of political and physical violence. The Amen Effect explores this ancient pilgrimage ritual when hundreds of thousands of people would ascend to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the focal point of Jewish religious and political life in the ancient world. The crowd, it would be a seething mass of humanity, and people would enter into the courtyard, turn to the right, and circle counterclockwise around this enormous complex, eventually exiting close to where they had entered. Now, anyone who was suffering, the bereaved, or any other type of sorrow, that person would enter the same way, but would walk in the opposite direction, turn left, and walk, every step against the current, if you will, which is just how we feel when we're hurting. Those who are not suffering on that day, they walk. They see a stranger coming towards them, making her way against the current flow of the crowd. And we all want to just avert our eyes when we see someone like that, right? Whether you're at a bus stop, you're in the church foyer, you're in the grocery store, or the sidewalk outside your house. But in this ritual, you're not allowed to avert your eyes. You stop, you greet them with a simple, open-hearted question. What's your story? Why does your heart ache? What happened to you? And those folks, they don't pretend that they're okay, because they're not okay. They would answer honestly. They would say, I lost my dear friend of 40 years. My husband left. I found a lump. My cat died. And those people, they would wear their troubles on the outside. The whole world is moving seamlessly in one direction and you in the other. And in this ritual, you trust you won't be marginalized or mocked or misunderstood. And those who walked from right to left, well, each one of them would look into the eyes of the bereft and just offer a few words of comfort. I see you. You're not alone. For some, may God comfort you, or may you be wrapped in the embrace of this community. And they continue to walk until they see the next distressed person. More than 2,000 years ago, the rabbis, the wise spiritual leaders of the time, constructed a system of ritual engagement built on a simple but profound psychological insight. When you're suffering, all you want to do is self-isolate, because the feeling is, who would understand anyways? But instead, you show up. You root your suffering in the context of care. More than 2,000 years ago, at a time when we were not globalized, we lived, related, and died locally, long before the identity politics and polarization of today, before the internet, before social media. Way back then, they created a sacred circle ritual to model intervulnerability. Today, I get to walk from right to left, because tomorrow, it'll be me. I can hold you now, knowing that eventually you'll hold me. Intervulnerability. Now, in this book, The Amen Effect, Rabbi Brous also shares the story of Derek Black. Derek Black now goes by a different name, but I'll convey the story as it's written. Derek Black is the son of Don Black. Anyone remember that name? The former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Holocaust denier, started the internet's first white supremacist website, Stormfront. Derek Black was raised to take over the white nationalist movement in the US. Derek built the kids page of the Stormfront website. Growing up at the very heart of America's white nationalist supremacist movement, racist hatred was all Derek knew. Derek went to college, and at college, when his classmates discovered the family connection, well, Black was largely shunned. But one classmate, Matthew, a religious young man, Jewish, invited Black for Friday night Shabbat dinner. Can you imagine the tension at their first meal? Like dinner with a guest whose foundational identity, whose connection to family and community is rooted in violent, virulent racism and anti-Semitism? But Matthew, he was just pleasant, and he offered connection. And one thing led to the next. Eventually, a few other Jewish students joined Shabbat dinners together with Matthew and David. They discussed, they debated. For every study that Black cited attempting to prove racial superiority, they'd counter back with 150 more recent, more well-researched studies. They argued back and forth until Black really had to admit that the arguments they believed didn't hold together. Over a year or two, there was just one thing after another until Black got to the point where they simply no longer believed the ideas they grew up with. Black's Jewish classmates invested hugely in community. They opened their homes week after week to engage in the painstaking work of stretching another person to open their heart, of humanizing themselves to a known neo-Nazi, and even finding humanity in him. That work was not without risk and certainly had huge emotional burden. But that work exemplifies the transformative power of relationships. Community is a powerful, longitudinal form of transformative, sacred conversation. Filled with intervulnerability. It honors our complex and profound interconnectedness, and always with a deep, humble awareness of how precarious life is. We show up for one another when it matters most, in celebration and in sorrow, and we just pay the love forward. We bear witness with each other. We bear witness with one another. We bear witness with one another. My friends, I know you get this. I know you get it. That's part of the reason you're here. And our dear friend Sonia Makarov knew this clearly. That's why she sent the message to all of us as she neared her chosen day of death. She said, I want you all to know that I feel so blessed to have had you all in my life. Your friendship and support has meant the world to me. This is holy work. Showing up for one another is holy practice. Maybe it just comes down to the simple phrase, we're doomed without each other. I think it does remind us to just be loving. And on days you don't feel loving, well, just be kind. Because as someone said, kindness is simply love in her daily clothes. For the theists in the room, Rabbi Shalom Berezovsky reminds us that it's not only the angels that are imbued with a sacred mission, but each of us humans too. Each of us is a holy messenger called to live into a purpose. For the atheists in the room, well, I'll challenge us to translate that thought into this simple but audacious statement. Maybe the angels? Maybe we're all the angels, and all we need to do is unfold our wings. The world's waiting for us. So I now invite you to walk the labyrinth one more time. But this time, as we progress through, we're going to stop on a white dot on the floor. And we'll let the others behind us come past. And this time, we're not looking down. This time, in complete silence, I invite you to look deeply into the eyes of everyone as they pass. No words, just reflect each other's light. It won't quite be the right to left counterclockwise ritual like they did on the Temple Mount, but close enough. We'll bear witness to each other. Thank you again to the Celtic Quintet, who will very slowly lead our walk. I'll lead us off. Here we go. Hold your spot. You're all confused. So when you start, you're going to look at the as you go through. So now we're going to unwind this, and instead of looking down, we're going to make eye contact with every single person we pass. Hang in there. I promise it'll work. Charlene and Jill are going to lead us off. Thank you, everyone, for your patience with that. Let us rise as we're able and sing now together Song 298, Wake Now My Senses. Thank you, Allison, for accompanying us with this song. Wake now my senses and weary fall. Feel the deep power of living on. Keeper of creation, your love. Living with sleeping as love shows us how. Please be seated. If you find your seat again. So some closing words. I've just started reading this book by Jonathan Haidt. It's called The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Seemed a timely time to read it. It's been out for about 12 years. I haven't gotten in very far, but one point that he makes is that the most highly ideologically focused or driven people on either side of the spectrum, they tend to bully people, anyone who dares to suggest that there are nuances to the issues or who expresses any kind of compassion for those on either side. They bully even those who want to see the humanity of the other. Does that sound like anyone in current politics? Unfortunately, it's not just one person. There's a lot of people like that now. And in an effort to avoid being bullied, what happens to the majority of people in the middle is they just become silent. When we are silent, we are not connecting. We're not engaging in being supported by community. That disengagement is a lethal societal path. Now let's contrast that with what the community did when they met and welcomed David Black. That's transformative sacred community. And that's why and how this beautiful place can be a place for many, like invite others, because no one needs to be alone. We can be the illuminators that Sue spoke about last week. All love is the mirroring and magnifying of each other's light. Showing up for one another is holy practice. We are each other's spiritual anchor. We bear witness with one another. We bear witness with one another. So let's close our time together. We'll extinguish the chalice. Carry with us the light of vision and the warmth of hope. The world calls us to live in community with depth, meaning, and purpose. We go forth with courage and love. Please rise for the closing song, Circle Round.